Good afternoon and welcome. It's yet another day for us to come away with another edition of State of Play. A lot of issues are making waves in Ghana, in the sub-region, of course, on the continent as well. But which one do we talk about? We're going to talk about two things, but blended in one. We're asking a very relevant question, taking into cognizance what is happening in Niger. Now, if you have followed what has been happening in Niger, I'm sure by now you're asking yourself, and again, people are warning that there are two more of such incidents, coups, to happen in the sub-region before the end of the year. And you're probably asking yourself, do we come in as a country? Now, a lot of people are also asking, questions about why what happened in Niger happened. And why, of course, with what is happening now, it creates an environment for people to say, well, we want to make sure that the status quo changes. But you have to ask yourself, do you value your democracy as it is now? Or you want a change of it? You need to do a critical analysis of the issues before you can, then take your own decision. But the thing is, we're going to look at what has happened in the past. We've had coups in this country, whether they were able to deliver what they promised or not. Then you can, based on that, to arrive at a conclusion on your own that, well, because ABC couldn't deliver 1, 2, 3, we cannot say that we can trust in the ABC to then be our savior. Or you can do your analysis to then say, well, I think that these were the things that ABC did for us in the past, and therefore we can consider. But, well, when it comes to coups in Africa, many people have a stance. They feel that, well, they haven't been able to deliver what we expected of them. This country, Ghana, has witnessed some. You ask yourself, for the regime that overthrew Nkrumah, the ones that overthrew the subsequent one, and all of those that came up, were they able to give us really what we desired of them, aside the, immediate relief? Because when it happens, people rejoice. That immediate relief that it brings. After that, do we really see tangible evidence of why we should support, all of these things? Now, in Niger, the palace guards that, disposed of the president, His Excellency Bazoum, they thought that things were happening in the country that was not going on well. So once they came, they've said, we are no longer going to send, whatever the taxes that we collect to the Central Bank of France. We're not going to do that. They've stopped the exportation of some natural resources out of the country. They are taking certain decisions. But the question is, will they last? Will they last the time for you to then arrive at the conclusion that indeed, this is the way to go? But the question then becomes that if you look at what is happening, do we have to take our democracy for granted? The democracy that gives you that freedom of speech, you can express yourself without fear of favor in this country. We enjoy that one. Democracy where you have the power to decide whether you want Kojo to be, your president, or you want Evans Mensah to be your president. That is the democracy we practice. With what is happening in Niger, it means that until the people who, undertook this exercise decide that we want to return the country to democracy again, it is they who will decide who governs the Nigerians. So question for us this afternoon, for us to all, ponder on is, do we have to take our democracy for granted? But another person would, so the question we're asking today is why Niger should keep Ghana awake at night. Do not take our democracy for granted. So, in our proverbial language, we say, if you see your friends, your neighbor's beard on fire, what you do? You fetch water and put beside you, so that when the fire gets to you, you're able to quench it. So what are we doing as a country? But then somebody will also come in and say, with the latest revelation that one minister, Cecilia Abinadapa alone, in just 2 accounts out of her 4 accounts at Prudential Bank, one had $5 million and the other had over 40 million cedis. I'll quote the exact figure for you, but that is the figure. Those are the ranges of the figures. Then someone will ask, if you look at that, wouldn't you then be right to say that we cannot go along this leg? Because you see that the democracy we are practicing, some few people are enjoying at the expense of the masses. Those are some of the arguments, an argument that a group or a section of the populace are advancing, especially on social media. And this is on social media, so share your thought with us, so that we can all have this discussion. But so that's the sort of argument that some section of the populace is advancing. That if you look at what is happening with our ministers, then you cannot, continue to practice what we call democracy. But then another section would ask you, do you know what happens when the military also comes into power through the gun, like what has happened in Niger? So they will come, to overthrow a democratic regime. But when they do that, we've all learned from history that they end up, amassing wealth for themselves at the expense of the same populace that they came to save. So question is, did they live up to expectation or did they fail? And from literature, we some of us didn't live in those eras. We only came to read from what was or were written about those eras. And then we could only say that, well, looking at what has happened, then of course you cannot say that this is the way to go. So there are 2 sets of arguments that people are advancing, that what is happening in Niger should keep Ghana on its toes. Should keep us awake at night. We can't sleep because of what's happening. You know that Ghana is joining other West African countries to decide on what to do with the Nigerian situation. So already we are not sleeping. Our president, as we speak, is in Nigeria, joining other heads of state to debate on what to do with the Nigerian issue. Whilst at it, we understand that our intelligence agencies are not sleeping. They are awake and ensuring that, this does not befall us. But the whole thing is thrown back at you and I. We have to then decide, is the worst of democracy better than the best of, a military regime? You ask yourself this, and then you can compare from whatever has happened, in the past, for you to then arrive at a conclusion which is favorable to you. That, well, do I then say that this is better for me or not? So, with all that we've done, we had our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was overthrown in 1966 when some military men thought he was turning Ghana into a one-party state. He wanted to be president for life, and they did not like it. They disagreed with what he was doing, even though, from what we have learned, no government since the First Republic has been able to outshine the Kwame Nkrumah government. They still overthrew Kwame Nkrumah, thinking that they were to deliver the best of economies that Ghanaians were asking for. Did that happen? As we speak, did we see it? We've learned from literature that it did not. When they came, another military regime overtook that military regime. Did they deliver? From history, we learned that Colonel Kutu Achiampon's regime was probably the one that delivered something that people could even refer now, like they say, Operation Feed Yourself. I mean, that time, he encouraged Ghanaians to then take into farming. At your backyard, you plant crops to feed yourself. That probably people refer to. But aside that, and the one that led us into the Fourth Republic, the Jerry John Rawlings regime, the last of his coups, that led us introduce the Fourth Republic, which we've practiced over the years till today. Aside them, what other ones can you be proud of to say that indeed and in fact, those ones delivered? Well, joining me on State of Play this afternoon, I got my virginity broken some few months ago, but today I'm also glad to usher my brother from the north, the brother that Multimedia gave me, Samuel Mbura, to break his virginity on State of Play. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Brace.
I hope all is well.
All is well, by Brace.
So up north, how do we say good afternoon?
It's a Wuntenga.
Wuntenga.
Yeah, that's the green language. Yeah.
Oh, Wuntenga. Okay, so Wuntenga.
Yeah, it's a Naba.
All right then. So this is what we are discussing.
Yeah.
With what is happening in Niger, we're saying that why the Nigerian situation should keep Ghana awake at night. Should we take our democracy for granted? What do you make of it?
Right, so this issue is something that should be of much worry to all African countries. The reason there is a spotlight on Niger is the fact that other countries are being surrounded by Niger. And before this military coup d'etat in Niger, we know that Burkina Faso has suffered a coup d'etat.
Yeah.
We know Mali is one. So taking into consideration all these countries that have been affected by the coup, you should know that it is a cause for worry. What is the trigger for this? That's the question many people will ask. What is actually triggering the sweeping, wave of coup d'etats in the sub-region?
Yeah.
Is it the case that it is the problem of leadership? Is it the case that we now think that the military regime is better than civilian or democratic regime? So these are some of the nagging questions coming up. If you follow social media, people are raising questions. People are raising issues with what is happening over there. Now, if you look at the Nigerian situation, it has a history that predated in 1960. So this is about the fourth coup d'etat that they have witnessed in the country. And in the same country, someone was even reportedly, he was one of the leaders and was even attacked for importing water from foreign country. And you should look at the dynamics now that people appear to be more angry with the system, especially the way they expect things to be done. The things are not done that way, and they think that the leaders are slow to change per the way the people want it.
But shouldn't we be guided by history? The same history we are all referring to. Shouldn't we then refer to what has happened in the past and then come to a conclusion that maybe we only need to, Africanize democracy and not to, change our democracy with military regimes from what we've seen in the past?
That's a fact, and I think lessons are not being learned. There are three reasons accounting for that, in my view. One has to do with the external influence. We know that we are free from bondage, or we have been liberated from our colonial masters. However, some of them, to an extent, have interest. If you look at the Francophone countries, for instance, the French government still has an interest in the governance of the country. Now, they are getting aligned to other countries as well. So you realize that it is not just an African problem, but it has to do with some level of recolonization in the way that we have not taken cognizance of. The second one has to do with the fact that the African leaders are not learning lessons. It's like democracy is not meant for us. So they don't see the sense in listening to the pulse of the people. Now, when issues come up in governance, we have what we call public reactions, and every state apparatus uses it. And what they do is that when something happens in the country, you go to test the pulse of the people, get the reactions of the people, and that will shape government's decision on some of the issues that happen in the country. So one, if we don't yank ourselves from the colonial affiliation. Two, if we don't, like you say, Africanize the democracy in the African context, then we are still heading towards the dungeon. And the third one has to do with the level of civilization that the people are now open to. Everyone is now getting enlightened, and they think that, look, if it is not even through the military way, people use what we call the civil revolt. They revolt around that one, and then, I mean, come out with suggestions that of the view that, look, you are not doing it so well, so step aside. We are bringing in people who understand the terrain well, so let's use elections to remove them. But we realize that elections do not actually give us the people that we think should be leading. After elections upon elections, we'll complain that, yes, we voted for the person, but what we are seeing now is not what we expected. So some of these triggers are actually what is at hand now. And you are relating it to the Ghanaian situation, relating it to the Champon and all this, the military regimes that we have encountered in the country. Now the question comes, have we benefited, or we take 2 steps in front, 3 steps behind? So people who have witnessed military, regime wouldn't advocate for it.
Okay.
You know, but some of us are of the school of thought that, yeah, there's some level of discipline, but that does not yank the military from, corruption and all that. I mean, some suggest that even the military regime appears to be corrupt to an extent than even the democratic one. But what we need to understand is that we used to have what we call the engineering regiment in the military. They take charge of all the projects.
But they're still there.
Yes, so what are they doing now?
Well, they're still there.
Exactly.
I remember once when we needed to, desilted or so, we brought them on board to help in a way. So they are still there. The point is that, yes, there might be some sort of, in our democracy, our political leaders seek to assume that they have like total control. You understand? So sometimes, like you're saying, we become quite tired of them in a way. But if we become tired of them in a way, isn't it by way of us getting to the polls to say that we don't like what you're doing and therefore we want to change you for another one to come? Is it for us to then call for a military takeover? Like you're saying, those who have experienced it, some of them who have lived in the military regime might not be excited by people who call for military takeovers. Those of us who are calling for it might not have experienced it. But is it that we have lost trust in the system and so we feel that a coup must happen than to say that let us
I wouldn't want to cut in, but the fact is that let us not consider coup. Coup should not be the right way for us to govern the country. We have gone past that.
Exactly.
There is no need to build a constitution over 30 years, then you go back and reconstruct it. Nothing changes.
That's the point.
Mindset of the people is key. If you and I, we don't change our mindset and know that the power to govern the country is in our thumb. Let us conscientize the people towards looking at being responsible ourselves, because the leaders, what we put out there as leaders, the president now, Akufo-Addo, is a reflection of the people. Okay? Whether John Mahama, whether Akufo-Addo, or whoever that is government, it's a reflection of the people, because you selected the person. If you think that the person is not doing the right thing, 4 years is not any years that will keep you longer to change a government. Why not wait for the 4 years? Then you go and use the power of the thumb and remove the person. But you see, that doesn't work because the politicians know the trick. They know that you want something that will satisfy you now. You don't think about infrastructure. You don't think about the future. All what you are thinking about is now. You and I, you go to some constituencies to an extent. I've been saying this. Some people even approach their members of parliament that, can you help me with money to marry my wife? That is ridiculous, right? But these are some of the stark realities. If you go to your constituencies, I've been speaking with some MPs, they'll tell you that, look, anytime I'm going to my constituency, I spend no less than 300,000 Ghana cedis. 300,000 is 30K. So,
so 30,000. So 300,000 old cedis.
No, that's 3 billion old currency. Okay. So 300,000 per visit. Because one, you have to visit funerals, outdoors, whatsoever. So where do you think the person is getting those monies from? So where do you think they get those monies? So we have to actually conscientize our minds towards making the country better, because we have a role to play.
Do you think we have taken our democracy for granted?
We haven't taken it. I don't see so. It's just that we are. I wouldn't say we are abusing. I wouldn't say we have taken it for granted. But I think that there's need for us to improve. Every day we learn. Let's learn from the mistakes that we make and make things better. You can't say that because it is not going as expected, let's dump it and go for something different. You may not know what the next move you take will bring. Why don't you stick to the new dawn that you are finding yourself and make it better? Because the Constitution allows it for everyone to express his or her views. If you're not comfortable with what is happening in the government, go to court. Now, some may say that they have issues with the judiciary or some of the state institutions and all that. But it depends on how we all push together. If the leaders see that the citizenry is now enlightened, if the leadership see that the citizens now know they are right, they know the left from the right, then they'll up their game. If you no longer go to them, beg for funds, if you let them understand that, look, it is not the case that we want someone who come and share goodies to us. We saw what happened at Asin North, the by-election there. They went and shared goodies, reportedly. Both sides shared money to the people. However, they decided to vote the way they wanted. Yeah. So if we all continue to go this way, I don't think this issue about coup or using military, that wouldn't solve the situation.
All right, so
it's not the answer.
So it means that we share the same mind about us saying no to coups, because coups won't bring the solution. We've had that in the past. Literature tells us that they didn't deliver what we expected of them. Look, how the whole thing is going, we should have a part 2 of this whole discussion. But in Mbura, what is happening in Niger, you and I agree that we need to protect our democracy. What then must we all do, starting from leadership, because they have power?
Yeah, don't take the people for one. Don't take the people for granted.
No, you're answering to them.
Leadership one. Leadership shouldn't take the ordinary
followers.
Yeah. Don't think that we are so fragile. Don't think that we are so timid. Don't think that because we think that democracy is the best way to go, you should take the people for granted. Look, I have lived in the border region, and I know what I'm talking about. All what is happening is drifting towards the southern part of Africa. And Ghana is in the same borders with Burkina Faso, Togo, all those areas. And we need to be very, very careful about this. Don't sit in Ghana and think that, oh, this will never happen in Ghana. We don't know what will happen. It starts with not taking the people for granted, not taking your democracy for granted. Don't abuse the system. If you do this, I think we'll not have to be having conversations like this. People will not breed anger in them and explode at a point. Because if you take them for granted, what happened in Sri Lanka may just be a
teaser in Ghana. A lot of people, especially with what's happening now, that they are realizing that one person has so much money in their house and in their account. It then makes people start to question the whole democracy. But you should also then question how the person, because it's possible that someone can have all of those monies through, legal means.
Genuine means.
So when you don't have access to how the person made it, you we may be in a rush to then conclude, So like I say, we all have the right to react to this news in a certain way. But can we just be a bit hesitant, get the right fact, OSP is investigating, before we can conclude? Because I've seen a lot of people on social media, saying that this is probably the time that we need to show our anger. Right. I mean, I agree with that.
But the anger should be
I'm saying that, we should probably hesitate, get the full fact from the OSP, because you might not know. Someone might probably have done legitimate business to make the wealth. So we should wait for the OSP, come out with the findings, and then we can, based on that, to ask for anything we are asking for, but not coup. Yeah. We are saying that as for coup, they have not delivered for us as a country. You go back into history. I didn't live in it. I'm not sure Mbura lived in it. I didn't. You did?
No, I didn't.
So we just read about it to know that the military takeovers really did not deliver to Ghana what we desired. Yeah. What Nkrumah built over the years has turned out to be our most outstanding achievement any government has ever done. No government, and they all agree, has been able to outshine Nkrumah, which means that whatever the military guys did in that period didn't give us what we were looking for. So, we, like Mbura and I'm sure you agree with us, that a coup is not the way to go. We go to the polls to show our anger there. That look, we are the polls now. We are determining that what you did, we are scoring you there and saying that you have failed our exams, we're exiting you, we're bringing a new government. If you don't deliver, we let you go through the polls. And that's how we can build on our democracy. Because in fact, throughout the world, Ghana has become the shining example for democracy in Africa. Would we want to throw that away? I'm sure your guess is as good as mine. We would not want to throw it away. We want to maintain it and rather make it beautiful so that people can still learn from us. So that's how it should be. But like we all are saying, the Nigerian example should serve as a wake-up call for all of us. But leadership, like Mbura said, should not take followership, all of us, you and I, for granted. And let us also ensure that we are coming to the table with well-informed positions so that at the end, Ghana can be a better place for you and I and all of us here. It's been, a pleasure coming your way with today's edition of the State of Play. I did this with Samuel Mbura. We had to sit in for Evans and Winston. So grateful that you could share your afternoon with us. I wish I could share some of your tests, but okay. Let's see if we can share some of your tests here. Mbura and I will do this. Mbura will try and get access to it. I also try, and then we can share with you some of the comments that you are sending in. Okay. So let me see the thought here. Okay. Now this one says, where is, okay. This current government has made democracy useless. People engage in daylight robberies, yet state institutions sit unconcerned. Traditional leaders have become stooges of the regime, same as the clergy. The masses are getting poorer, while the elite few continue to enrich themselves with impunity. Let's stop deceiving ourselves and put our house in order. Dapo Raymond brought this one in. Raymond Abiwo says, we all saw a video in circulation on social media of which these MPP functionaries were stacking billions of Ghana cedis in a safe house. Really? I mean, do you see any video?
I haven't seen that video.
Yeah, I haven't. I also haven't seen it. What actually happened here is the fact that Mr. Addison unilaterally decided to print billions of Ghana cedis and hand it to MPP as political party. The only young man visible on that video mysteriously found dead few days after this video went viral. Really? I'm not aware of this video. Nidanso says, the problem is accountability.
Yeah,
that's
the issue, yeah.
I agree. That's it. You pay tax and you expect the tax to be used for the well-being of the people of the country, but there is just too much corruption by the political class. Okay, Nidanso there. Osman Kobina Okwan says, the kind of democracy practiced in Ghana, especially Ghana, is not helpful. Lot of loopholes in the constitution. It needs to be amended to limit some of the powers of the executives. Well, I think that some of you have brought in some cogent arguments there. Yeah. But like we said, we'll have a part 2 of this discussion. So to meet again next time, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.